Alyssa Farah, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show, and I appreciate you doing so. I really do. I want to talk about you and your time with Donald Trump in a moment, but let's start with the Republican Party. You very admirably opposed your party's attempt to overturn the election. You quit the White House when you weren't allowed to acknowledge Trump's loss. You called out the big lie. And yet today, 7 months on from the election, with the removal of Liz Cheney, the top 4 leadership positions in the House are held by people who voted to overturn the election. Kevin McCarthy, Steve Scalise, Gary Palmer, Elise Stefanik, of course. What has happened to your party? Your party's got more extreme, not less, since January the 6th.
Well, Maddie, thank you for having me. Listen, the GOP is careening down what I would say is both a strategically unwise path, but also a morally reprehensible one, just to be completely candid with you. Liz Cheney did the right thing. It's actually, we shouldn't be commending people for simply telling the facts. Like, facts matter. We need to tell the truth. She did the right thing, but that shouldn't be brave or heroic. That should just be what our leaders do. But unfortunately, here's the problem that the GOP is facing. This isn't going away. Voters have not forgotten about January 6th. The Republican Party has a numbers problem. We need addition, not subtraction, to be able to win back the principles that we actually care about. But right now, there's this decision that we care more about loyalty to the former president, care more about trying to gloss over what happened with the election and then January 6th. And, you know, my unsolicited advice to my fellow Republicans would be the truth tends to come to the top. It's better to address it now, to come to grips with what went wrong and accept it, because we're going to be dealing with this going into midterms. We're going to be dealing with it going into 2024.
Yes, indeed. And you admirably and bluntly... Sorry, I was going to say, you bluntly called the attackers on January the 6th terrorists in an interview with Politico. You've praised Liz Cheney, as you said a moment ago, for speaking the truth about it. And yet you also say Elise Stefanik was, quote, the best candidate to replace Cheney. How can you support replacing Liz Cheney with an election denier, with someone who voted to try and overturn the election, even on the night of January the 6th, after all the terrorism, who went on Steve Bannon's podcast just the other week to support the crazy audit of the election by the Arizona GOP, who still disputes Joe Biden's victory? Alyssa, you seem to want to have your cake and eat it.
Well, I would say this. Elise is someone I know very well. She's a highly educated, serious policymaker. She's actually a very moderate Republican member who I think votes her district and legislates her district. I will say this. I don't know every detail of where she came down on different aspects of the election, though I know if you asked her today, she would say Joe Biden is the president. That's a starting point. Listen, we've got to do better than that. We should have acknowledged it, you know, the day the race was called. But she's somebody I have confidence in to make good, sound policy for the American public.
Alyssa, policy aside, and you're right, she does have a quote-unquote more moderate voting record than Liz Cheney even, but Elise Stefanik still stands by her ridiculous claim that 1 in 4 votes cast in Fulton County, Georgia, 140,000 votes, were fraudulent or illegitimate. A quarter of all the votes cast in that county. That's bonkers, isn't it? How can anyone who holds that view be allowed anywhere near the leadership of your party? I assume you don't agree that 1 in 4 votes there were fraudulent.
Oh, I certainly don't. I'm actually not familiar with the comments of Elise Stefanik, so I wouldn't want to comment on them further. But no, that's absolutely ridiculous. We've litigated this in states around the country, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona. They've been thrown out. There's no there. And the sooner that my party accepts, we just came up short. We didn't win over enough people. We lost women. We lost older voters. We need to start winning them back on what we're actually for, what we actually believe in. Yes. And what I'm fearing is that people who actually have policy positions that they want to share, Liz Cheney, are getting pushed aside in the party for people who it's just pure adherence to supporting one man, which, by the way, is not a conservative belief. The idea of just complete loyalty to one person over virtues is just fundamentally unconservative. But here we are.
Well, so let's talk about that one person. You have, in past interviews, very admirably, I'll say again, admitted that Donald Trump lied to his supporters about the election. And as I mentioned, you also very bluntly, very rightly called those Trump supporters who attacked the Capitol terrorists. So would you accept the logic of your own argument that your former boss, former president of the United States, Donald Trump, is an inciter of terrorism?
I think that I've spoken about it before. He played a role in inciting the violence on the Capitol. I went on CNN shortly after and I said, in terms of the second impeachment, he shouldn't relitigate that day because the facts are not on his side. There was a constitutional question in terms of impeaching somebody who's no longer in office, but it's very clear. The words are there. We know what he said, and we know how, more importantly, we know how the people who stormed the Capitol interpreted it. Many of them are on the record now and have said this is what we thought the president wanted us to do. And it's tragic. Part of why I'm on your program, by the way, is because I care about conveying this to people who maybe aren't Republican voters, to know there is going to be a moment in this party where it's not all Donald Trump all the time. Our politics are cyclical, but I hope that my party comes around to the actual principles of what we stand for. There was a time where I was proud to work for Donald Trump. We created an economically inclusive economy, lowest unemployment for women, for African Americans, for Hispanics. But all of that is overshadowed by this myth that we're continuing to perpetuate. And I would note, Kristen Welker made a good point on your network earlier, which is Trump's about to get out and start doing rallies again. This isn't going away. So to my friends, to the Kevin McCarthy's of the world, this is not something that you're going to be able to just brush aside.
So you say you're proud about having worked in the White House. A lot of people would say there was much to be ashamed of well before January the 6th. They say that it's great that you resigned in December and spoke out against the big lie. But a lot of your critics, and I wonder what you say to your critics who say it was too little too late, who ask, why didn't you resign earlier, Alyssa? Why didn't you quit when he outrageously told 4 non-white women in Congress to go back to where they came from? Why didn't you quit when he lied about COVID being like the flu or talked about putting disinfectant into people's arms? Why didn't you quit when he was separating children from their parents at the border?
Well, my answer to that simply is governing's a lot different than campaigning. I never signed up to be on Donald Trump's campaign. I actually turned down the opportunity to the first time that he ran. But once somebody is the president and the leader of the free world, where the entire U.S. federal government, the most powerful military on the planet, is under his control, I believe that people who are willing to and who are serious should step up and try to serve. And there were people in the White House who I knew reluctantly stayed when there were very hard things said, that there were hard policies that they saw enacted, because they knew they could marginally do better. I'm not asking for any sort of a pat on the back. I think I've managed to alienate folks both on the right and the left, but I do believe in public service. One thing that you mentioned, I was with Vice President.
Understood. Understood, but doesn't public service involve you also saying, I can't work for a racist, misogynist bully who tells black and brown women to go back to where they came from? How do you go into work the next day and work for a person and say, I'm a senior official for a president who says racist things like that?
Well, as a brown woman, I'm Lebanese and Syrian. It is challenging. I remember counseling him, and while I do keep my conversations I've had directly with the president private, counseling him publicly that the easiest thing that you can do, you can wake up every morning and condemn white supremacy. That shouldn't be hard. Pulling teeth and making it something difficult was just an unnecessary thing that I repeatedly told him, let's make this just unequivocal, condemn it, and let's move on. But you know what? I would rather have people in the room who are willing to speak up and say those things. But I should also note this. I believed in about 90% of his agenda. I'm still a Republican. I still didn't vote for Joe Biden. Do I think it's probably better following January 6th that he's in office? Absolutely. But I believe in Republican principles. I believe that we're better on the economy, we're better on national defense. And I'm going to keep fighting for who my party is.
I understand you believe in Republican principles. I respect that. Republican principles, low taxation, small government, family values. That wasn't Trump. Trump was taking kids from the border. Trump was authoritarianism. Trump was telling black and brown people to go back to where they came from. Trump was lying about hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. You were there through all of that. I'm just wondering how you justify that. Is it just through the tax cuts? What is the reasoning? I'm genuinely interested.
No, not by
someone like you says, I'm going to carry on.
Let me give you kind of... Oh, yes, just 2 quick answers there, which I was going to allude to. So I was with Vice President Pence during the family separation crisis, which was awful. It was terrible. It was inhumane. I think we did reverse it within our administration, but it was because people were willing to be in the room and advocate for it. I remember Secretary Azar, who had a role in overseeing it with HHS, push back and help reverse that policy. Vice President Pence quietly behind the scenes push back. If every person who disagreed with things that the president did up and left and, got their minute of putting out a righteous statement, but then we're on the outside and not in a position to influence policy, we would have had worse outcomes. So that's my position there. What I would say is, no, there's more than that I believed in, that we accomplished and worked on. And the federal government, the presidency is bigger than any one man. As an Arab American, it was truly a great moment to be in the Oval Office during the signing of the Abraham Accords. There are things that we have to be proud of, but we also need to reject the untruths, and we need to live based on facts and just move on from this moment in our history.
We do. We're out of time, but I have to ask on that very moment. And you said, one question people would say is, why did you help try and re-elect him? Now you're speaking out against him. Great. If Donald Trump runs again in 2024, as looks likely, will you as a Republican oppose his candidacy, or will you, like Nikki Haley or Mitch McConnell, say, yeah, he did bad things on January 6th, but if he's the candidate, I'll support him? Will you say tonight, I will oppose Donald Trump if he's the Republican candidate in 2024?
Yes, I will not be supporting Donald Trump in 2024.
Alyssa Farah, appreciate you coming on the show tonight. I'm glad it's easy for you. It isn't for some in your party. I appreciate you coming on the show tonight. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.